Administration's policy of separating children from their parents at the border has sparked outrage from people on both sides of the aisle. Republicans on Capitol Hill have introduced legislation to end family separation. No one image has come to define the policy more than this one. It shows a 2-year-old Honduran girl crying as her mother is pat down. We want to bring in John Moore. He is the Getty Images special correspondent and senior staff reporter. John, welcome. Thanks so much for being here. I want to talk to you, first of all, about this photo of this 2-year-old girl that has so resonated with people. Tell us about the circumstances surrounding that photo.
I had been photographing the Border Patrol on their operations in McAllen, which is in the Rio Grande Valley of southern Texas with the border with Mexico. And they came upon a group of immigrants, all women and children, who had gathered after crossing the Rio Grande on rafts. And they slowly, one by one, the Border Patrol checked everyone's identifications, they registered them, and then they body searched everyone one by one as they put them in the van to take them away. Now, during that time, I noticed a mother holding a young child, and I had very little time to talk with her. I asked where she came from, and she said Honduras, and her daughter was 2, and they'd been traveling for a month. Now, that trip from Honduras to the border over a month is a very long and hard road, and I'm sure they went through a lot. And she had a very weary look on her face.
And do you know where that little girl is now?
I wish I could say. When they take people away to the processing center, they don't give you information on what happens next.
And tell us what we don't see in this photo. I mean, she was crying, but nearby is her mother being pat down.
That's right. Her mother was asked to set the child down while she was being frisked before loading onto the vehicle. And I'm a father myself. I have 2 daughters and a young son. And I mean, it's emotional for me. Separation anxiety is very common in young children. But I think this picture it adds a whole new meaning to that phrase.
You've been taking these kinds of images, documenting people coming into the United States for 10 years now, as I understand it. What drew you specifically to that type of work?
Well, I returned to the U.S. After living abroad as a foreign correspondent for many years, and I was immediately drawn to the border. I'd worked in Latin America for 7 years earlier in my career, so I'd covered immigration really from the other side of the border. I speak Spanish, and it was a natural for me to be interested in this very human story, because we've seen oftentimes that immigration issues in the border is often related in terms of statistics. And to put a human face on a story like this zero tolerance story is a way to humanize the issue. The photographs that people remember are usually the ones that make them feel.
And that is certainly, I think, true of the photo that you've taken of this little girl from Honduras. When you talk to these families, John, I wonder what it is that they tell you about what they hope will happen here in the United States for them.
Well, although I couldn't speak very long with the families here, it was clear that they all wanted to turn themselves in for political asylum. And I had the feeling that many of them had no idea about the new zero tolerance policy in terms of family separation. And Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, had just announced that morning that these pictures were taken, that the U.S. would no longer consider domestic violence and gang violence in terms of asking for asylum in the U.S. So these people really had no idea what would come next after they were taken away. And that's what made the situation different for me. Although I'd photographed families being taken into detention many times before, this time I knew what would happen next, that many would be separated. And for me, that made it much more emotional.
And remind us again, why are people leaving their home countries in the first place?
Well, as part of my 10 years of work on immigration, I've spent a lot of time in Central America trying to show just that, the reasons why people leave. And the levels of gang violence, especially in Honduras and El Salvador, and also to some extent in Guatemala, are absolutely outrageous. Most folks who come up to ask for political asylum are not coming with months and months of planning. They're coming wearing the shirts on their back. Many of them had to leave in the middle of the night because of a very acute threat, and they come often with almost nothing.
Well, these pictures are certainly thought-provoking. As you said, they evoke a real sense of what's happening beyond just the numbers that we keep hearing about. John Moore, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you.